Today's Homeowner with Danny Lipford. Real projects for real homeowners with real solutions. Information and inspiration on improving your home from professional remodeler Danny Lipford.
Now, with a view like this, you can really understand why the owners of this property have decided to build an addition onto the rear of their home so that they can really take advantage of the view. What we're building is a sunroom, 12 feet by 22 feet. And we'll show you this from start to finish in this week's show. Now, sunrooms are very popular, and if you're considering building one on your home, we've got some great ideas for you. Also, the owners have discovered a number of problems with the existing house since they moved in 3 years ago. We're going to help them with those problems, so stay with us. Welcome back to the show. I'm in the process of checking the depth and the width of our footings because later today we'll be pouring all of the concrete necessary. This is on the outside perimeter of our sunroom. But before we start talking about the footings, let's talk to one of the homeowners. Well, Susan, I'm sure you've gotten very familiar with the house plans. This is Susan Lee, one of the homeowners, and really the process of building the sunroom and getting to this point really started a long time ago, didn't it?
It did. It started about 2 years ago, soon after we moved in the house, and trying to add some things and change some things in the house.
Well, now, I know you had a large deck here originally that stretched, I guess, just about the whole back of the house, and the little covered gazebo area was part of that. Somebody did a lot of work to get rid of that deck.
Well, my husband and my neighbor were pulling off the deck. We helped.
Good.
But it did. It came from all the way the entire span of the house, and there was an old hot tub under that gazebo. But we're going to turn it back into just a sitting area.
Okay, and so later on you're going to then rebuild a deck similar to what was there, but just extend it out some.
Yeah, it's coming out to where this lumber is.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, you have plenty of projects to do right along with everything else. So.
Out with y'all.
Now, as far as the decision to position the sunroom here, what really drove that decision instead of just building on to the existing gable roof behind us? Why there?
Well, a little bit later on, we've got some plans to come further out with extending our bedroom or bath on our master side.
I see.
And this room actually flowed a little bit better from the family room and then the kitchen and our bedroom, because, you know, when our son goes off to college, we may not even need some of this part back here all the time.
I see. Well, that does make a difference. That's a great gathering area for the entertaining or family time to have all of that flow like that. Now, one thing you've done here on the plans is something I recommend to a lot of homeowners, is to really look at the master plan, what you want to achieve with the overall house. Now, of course, the kitchen is drawn on here, but I understand that's a second phase.
That's coming in a little bit later. We may still do some of the flooring, but where we're cutting into that sunroom, we've got some cabinets that we're still in decision. So that may be, after all this is done, then we're going to try to go for the kitchen.
I see. Well, it makes sense because with you and your family still living at the house, you have to keep a little level of sanity there, and if you take away the kitchen with all the other activity, it might be hard to live in the house.
Probably would not be able to survive it.
Well, it is looking good, and I know that as we progress along, you being familiar with the plans and the elevations and how it all ties together is really a big advantage, so that you're not guessing as we go along, and I'm sure it'll turn out just like you want it. You know, it's really nice having homeowners that are so involved in the process, because it really makes the project move along more smoothly, and they know what to expect once the project's complete. But it all starts right where the footings are. Now, our footings will be about 12 inches deep, and they're about 24 inches wide. And what we have here with the little wooden pegs down in the ditch itself are grade pegs. Now, these have been set precisely at the level that we want the concrete to end up. That way, once that's done, we'll of course have our concrete blocks coming on up to about this height, then we'll build our floor system. Now, after the concrete sets up a bit, we'll be removing all of the wooden stakes. That's just simply to make sure we get the right grade. Now, also, you notice the half-inch steel rods or rebar down in the bottom of the trench that are sitting up on little cradles, what we call rebar chairs. They're also tied off with a tie wire, and the reason for this, of course, is to strengthen the concrete and to have continuous steel support all around the corners and throughout the footings. And they're sitting up on the little rod chairs so that once the concrete is completely set, they're right in the middle of the concrete where it'll provide the most strength. Now we're in an area that's south of Mobile, Alabama, so our frost line is not a concern, so that's why the footings are only 12 inches deep. In other parts of the country, say up in the New England area, this footing may be as deep as 4 feet, so you need to check with your local building officials on the requirements for footings in your area. Now, speaking of building officials, our inspectors have been out to inspect all of the work. That's cleared. Our termite treatment is all complete, and we're ready to pour concrete, which is a good thing because the concrete will be here just any minute. The crew uses wheelbarrows to move the concrete to the footings since the truck can't make it around the back of the house. The footings are filled up to the level of the grade pegs and the surface is finished. Because the footing is below grade, it doesn't really have to be pretty and smooth, just level. These additional steel rods will go up through the block wall to tie into the footing, and when the concrete sets, we'll be ready for those blocks. Now our sunroom addition is really starting to look like a sunroom. Most of the framing is complete with the wall standing, the roof framed, and now the guys are in the process of laying out all of the roofing felt. That way we'll be ready for shingles later today. Now our block masons were out and were able to install all of our blocks for our chain wall that'll serve as our foundation, and they made sure they installed plenty of foundation vents, which are always important to get the circulation under the addition. The floor system is made up of 2x10s that span the space from the front to the back. Now these 2x10s or floor joists are secured to a treated 2x8 that is anchor bolted to the top of the block wall. Metal straps, commonly called hurricane straps, ensure that the floor and the foundation stays together, even if the wind is stronger than gravity. Between the joists, the crew installed small blocks or cribbing to stabilize the floor laterally. The 3/4-inch tongue and groove decking went on next and was both glued and nailed. Now this not only serves as our subfloor, but it really stabilizes the whole floor system. Now it may seem like a little bit of overkill, but you have to realize that this floor will be supporting not only its own weight, but the weight of several people walking back and forth, what we call a live load. Now if it's not built properly, it's going to be a little spongy, a little bouncy. It's a very uncomfortable feeling in any type of floor system. Well, that's exactly one of the problems that we're going to correct for the homeowners on their existing floor. The homeowners had noticed when they walked across this section of the floor that it had a real bounce to it right in the middle of the kitchen. So much that the water in the glass would actually slosh around. They asked us to take care of it while we're here, and what we found was a floor system that really needed some extra support. George and Derek are sliding a 16-foot 4x6 beam under the house to stiffen up the existing floor framing. Now, even with crawl suits, this is a dirty job because it's tight, dusty, and hot in this crawl space. It's important not to disturb the ductwork, plumbing, or electrical lines as the beam is put into position. Metal strapping material is nailed to the floor joist to temporarily support the beam while the jacks are placed underneath. They lift the beam under the floor joist and in the middle of the unsupported span. Now, the floor jacks are set beneath the beam on a concrete block and tightened by hand until they fit snugly. Then each of the 3 jacks is tightened with a wrench until the beam supports all of the joist in this span.
Good enough.
And I'm sure the homeowners will be glad to get their new doors in place. Now the jacks that we looked at will have to be tightened a little bit each day so that we can compensate for the compaction of the soil under the jacks. Now we'll be leaving all of the windows and doors and siding in place until the new windows and doors are in place so that we can protect the homeowners from the heat, the noise, and all of the dust. Now stay with us because before the end of the show, we'll show you this completed project. Well, our sunroom addition is completely dried in. Our roof and our shingles are all complete and all of the windows and doors have been installed. But we still got a long way to go in order to finish this addition. There's just so many details on an addition that have to be complete, and it just seems like work's just not being done when you're at this stage in a project. But our next big step is to install the vinyl siding. Our vinyl siding contractor will come out and really be able to disguise the old and the new where it meets. That'll be our next big step, and will be very maintenance-free for the homeowners since this is right on the water and subject to a lot of wear and tear on the exterior of the house. Now, you may remember the homeowners, Max and Susan, had decided to build the wood deck on their own, and they're just kind of taking their time and doing a little bit as they can. You can see all the wood that we have that's piled up here being used to kind of walk across it as everything's being done. But one thing they've done a little different on this deck is made it completely freestanding. Most decks would attach to the wall with a ledger strip, then the deck would be finished and the siding would tie down on top of the finished deck. But on this one, with being freestanding, you can see how they have their treated 4x4s going right down into the concrete, will allow the siding to be installed and then the boards leading up to it. They felt like it would really protect the perimeter of the home a little bit better than having the ledger that may allow water to get in as it did in the past. They had quite a bit of damage on their outside band or rim joist in another area of the house that we had to repair before any of the windows and doors were installed. Now inside is taking shape. Now with the drywall installed on the inside of the addition, we can really get an idea of what it'll look like once everything's complete. Now Mark, our drywall finisher, is in the process of taping and mudding out all of the seams. It'll take him 2 more trips before all of the walls are complete. Now another thing we've been able to complete is the installation of the 1/2-inch cement backer board. Now the reason we installed the backer board is that we had a wood subfloor that served as the foundation, and the homeowners have selected a ceramic tile that's 13 by 13 that'll be installed in this area and eventually will extend right on into the kitchen on a later phase. And we've established the opening into the sunroom, or one of the openings, nice and wide, nice and tall, nice transition from the wall to the ceiling, and this I like, a little bar area. It'll have a countertop, be able to serve the food right out into the sunroom. Now, the ceiling itself, we were able to vault up actually using the framing from the roof to serve as the ceiling joist, nailing the sheetrock right to the bottom of the joist after insulation was installed, and it created a real nice spacious feel in the room, vaulting up almost 11 feet. Now what we're doing as far as the finish on this is we'll be applying a light orange peel texture, and if you hold an orange away from you, it looks nice and smooth. If you get it up close, it has a little bit of texture. That's the way the ceiling will be finished. But the challenge we have is that the existing ceiling is a popcorn type texture that a lot of people just don't like these days, and the challenge to match that ceiling with this ceiling has really been something. Now what you're seeing on this ceiling is the result of several hours of fairly hard scraping off the original texture, and you can see we definitely will need our drywall contractor to put a little finish on all of this in order to spray the light texture that we'll be spraying on the other ceiling. Also, he'll need to come in and take care of several patches that are a result of installing a few of the recessed lights that, while we had the ceiling in this condition, the homeowners decided to add a little additional light so that when they finish up their kitchen, they'll have all of that complete. Now, if you're thinking of doing this yourself, you may need to think twice because it is quite a mess, and if the ceiling has been painted before, it can really be hard to remove that texture. It is made a little easier by using a pump-up sprayer and some hot water and really soaking down the texture than using a wide blade knife to scrape off all of the texture. But just like this, be prepared to have your drywall finisher come in and do a little touch-up. Now stay with us. After this Around the Yard segment, we'll show you the completed project. The new 16-inch square ceramic tile floor just seems so appropriate for a sunroom like this. Now the homeowners have already started enjoying this room and have moved in some of the furniture they plan on using. But when we started this project, there was a lot of things taking place on this house. The homeowners had quite a bit of exterior water-damaged wood that had to be replaced, and an old wood deck that also had to be removed and is in the process of being replaced. Now, after all of the wood was replaced, we used vinyl siding to cover the outside of the addition as well as the existing home. That really served for a nice seamless blend between the old and the new. Now, the homeowners are doing a good bit of work themselves, including the replacement of the wood deck with actual composite wood that'll really save any problem in terms of water damage later on. But once that's complete, the sunroom's complete, they can really start enjoying the nice view. I'm Danny Lipford. We'll see you next week.
Get ready to review your fix-it list as Danny and home repair expert Joe Trewini show you this week's simple solution.
Now, spray paint can really be handy for all those painting jobs around your home.
especially the chores that are difficult to paint, like this stool. But the real trick is how do you use the paint can the second time, because often you can't get the paint to spray out.
Exactly. Those tips are notorious for getting clogged, staying clogged. I see homeowners all the time with 10 or 15 cans of paint on the shelf. Half-filled cans, and there are ways that you can kind of rescue some of those.
Right. The first way is to simply follow the directions on the can. I know that you always read all of the directions.
Every time.
But any spray paint can will tell you on the back of the label, when you get through painting, always turn it upside down and spray it until it runs clear. That's the first way to keep the tip clear, and so you'll be able to use it the second time around.
Now, what about those older cans that probably a few of our viewers have sitting around? You can rescue those by very carefully removing the tip off of the can and then drop it in overnight in lacquer thinner or paint thinner and just let it soak real well so that it loosens up those particles that are inside the tip.
Right, and then once it's soaked overnight, and sometimes it might actually take a couple of days, you can take it out and clear out the ports. What I like to use is just a twist tie from a loaf of bread. You pull off the wrapper that's on the outside, and the wire on the inside is a perfect diameter to fit inside the tip and clear out the softened paint.
Now, this really works well. I've tried it myself, and you may look out in your garage and get those 10 cans of paint you have sitting there and give this a try. By tomorrow, you've got some extra paint.
Now let's join Danny at the Home Center to check out the best new products.
You know, there's a number of things that you can buy at the Home Center that can be a headache to assemble, and a gas grill is a good example of that. Now, if you've ever had a gas grill given to you as a gift or purchased one on your own, you know exactly what I mean. You can spend a fair amount of time putting it together before you ever even get to use it. Well, that's different now with this model from Charbroil. It actually assembles in 6 easy steps, only takes a few minutes, and no tools are required. Now, after you get your Charbroil grill home, take it out of the box. First step is to unfold the legs, then attach the support plates to the legs as well as the center grill assembly. Then install your wheels and feet, attach the 2 side shelves, then attach the grate, and the last step is connecting your propane tank.
Now let's go outside for Around the Yard with Danny and lawn and garden expert Barbara Katz.
Now, Barbara, even I know that you really need to water all the plants around the house, but I really don't know how often you should water the plants.
You know, Danny, everybody worries so much about watering, and it's not a precise science. I mean, there are a couple things you probably should try and figure out, like what sort of soil you have. If you have very, very heavy clay, then it's very important to let it dry out between waterings. But if you've got sandy soil, which just drains really quickly, then you're going to have to water, you know, more often.
Okay, but what about time of day? Is there a better time of day than others to actually water all the plants?
You know, if you can, it's better to water in the morning, because then you can just water everywhere and get everything soaking wet, and the foliage is going to have a chance to dry out through the day. If the only time you can water is when you get home from work, when that is, you know, reality for a lot of people,
sure,
you got to try and keep the water low to the ground, because those leaves, if they get moist in the nighttime and they go into the night like that, then they really can pick up some fairly serious diseases and blights.
Okay.
So just try and keep it low, and when you do that watering, just water as deeply as you can so you encourage real deep root growth, and then it'll actually take a little less water over the long haul.
Okay, is it possible to overwater some of the plants?
Absolutely. I mean, if I have one thing that I tell my customers, it is try to underwater rather than overwater, because it's the overwatering which really kills many, many more plants than anything else.